So turn to the book of Job if you're not there already. Job chapter where? 42, the last book. Okay, we're at the last book. Let me ask you something. What have you learned from this lesson? Is there anything that you've picked up on in the book of Job as we've gone through this? I know it's a lot to it. It is a very lot to it to capture, but anybody have anything they might have learned? I know it's Sunday morning and I ask questions and you don't have a cup of coffee in front of you and you just got to put up with my questions, okay? Sister Mary. Good. Job had faith in God, even after losing everything. Now, remember how, try to remember the things. How did do y'all remember the things that were lost and the order that they were lost? Anybody remember that? What was the first thing? All his cattle, his sheep, all those things, all his possessions. The things that were what? Think of it as a circle. Okay, and Job is in the middle of this circle. So the farthest things out away from him were what? His possessions were all taken away. So what was the next thing taken away from him? His children. That's your family. Now his wife's still with him, of course, we know that. But his children are taken away from him, okay? So what is the part is the closest to him now? What is it? His health. Remember, he's touched, now Satan is allowed to touch him and to afflict him and to damage his health, right? At first he was allowed to do what? Take all his possessions away and he would curse God. That was Satan's thought. Well, he'll just curse you, God. That didn't happen. So he was allowed to take the children away. And to me, I don't know about you, that's pretty strong stuff, taking your family away from you. I mean, that's really hurtful. And that was taken away from him. But he still didn't curse God. But when it got to the point now he touches him, becomes really, really, really personal, it's him that's being hurt, what do you do then? And he didn't know. He didn't know behind the curtain what was happening. He didn't know what was happening in heaven, the discussion that the Lord was allowing Satan to do things. But he was experiencing those things, wasn't he? But he still did not curse God. Even his wife tried to encourage him, just curse God and die, get over this thing, go with it. But he still did not. So what is so significant about Job anyways? At the very beginning, chapter 1, what's so significant about Job? I'm sorry, I got here. His faith in God. His righteousness. Okay, anybody else? That's right. The Lord had already said this, and who better else can vouch for your character than the Lord himself and say about Job, there's no man like him on the earth with his righteousness. There's nobody out there. Now, even though he possibly lived about the time of Abraham, I think before Abraham, but that's my choice, but could have been. But the Lord said there's nobody like him. There's nobody with that character like Job. And we said this at the very beginning. I'm trying to get to the end here. But the very beginning of this is that when this testing, this whole book deals with suffering, it's not like suffering dealing with like me. I'm not as good as Job. I admit, I'm not like Job is. But to choose the person who's the most perfect of a guy in so many ways. I mean, God says, if you don't know that, we'll go back to chapter 1. I think we need to see that, and we'll get to chapter 42 in a second. But what the Lord said about him, in verse 8, chapter 1, verse 8, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. I mean, like I said, you can't ask for a better reference than the Lord talking about you. And here's this great guy. And this challenge is going to happen to this great guy, not to one of the other people out there, but to this great guy that's going to go through all of this and still shine forth with his character. Now, God's going to work on his character a little bit at the end. We'll talk about that in a moment here. But through all of this, it's choosing I guess, the top of the top, you know? The top person of theirs that's on the earth. There's nobody like him. So now the challenge is with Job there, and to go through all of this. So with all that, keep in mind. So now we're going to chapter 42. All those things have been happening. And of course, who came to be of help to him, to Job? His friends. I mean, whew, man, don't we have friends like that? Does anybody have friends like that, you know? You know, they come along, they're going to help you. And they're really like, not really helping, are they? They're really talking bad about you, right to your face. You know, they think they're doing you a blessing and being an encouragement to you, but they're really tearing you up, those guys. So there's 3 of them, and of course, Elihu's, the youngest guy, shows up. You know, of course, he has his words he wants to say. Now, I know I'm asking you questions, but another question I think I presented to you before. The things that they said, are they right? Somebody just says no. They were correct. Not that everything they said was wrong, but what they were saying was not applicable to Job at all. Okay, so that's in there. And they said some things that weren't right either. And the Lord's going to talk, we're going to talk about here in a second, here in chapter 42, what the Lord said about them. Okay, so we're going to go to chapter 42 if you're not there already. So we'll go there. So we've done a little bit of background here. As you saw in chapters, back it up a little bit, chapter 38. From chapter 38 on, in chapter 38, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said. So from chapter 38 all the way down to chapter 41, the Lord has given his information, his response to everything in a way. And what did he say? What did the Lord say in all of that? Anybody remember? Asking Job, okay, were you there when I formed the earth? Okay, so what is the gist of all of that together? His speech that the Lord, I hate to say the word speech, but the Lord's statements here that he said in those chapters, what is all of that together indicating? What is he trying to present here? I'm sorry, I hear 3 different, Mary? He's in control of everything and always has been. Brother Randy? God's saying he is sovereign. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, we're all in agreement, right? And interesting, these 2 large characters, you see this picture here, you see up on the screen, the Leviathan, but you know the behemoth, you know, could have been a dinosaur, a huge dinosaur of everything. Okay, so we talked about that. These 2 great creatures, God created them, humongous creatures, and for the purpose that they're used for. You know, they probably don't exist now. We don't know what's down in the deep of the sea, you know, but as far as we know, they don't exist anymore. But God presents these 2 great creatures like, where are you at? I mean, what can you do, Job? Can you put a hook in Leviathan's and pull him around? Can you control him? Those kind of things he brought out to, and it kind of, you think about what he's doing to Job is saying, you really don't know what you don't know, but you're really small in all this whole scheme of everything. God is in control. God is in control of everything that takes place. Okay, so let's go to chapter 42. I'm trying to say that. Get chapter 42, verse 1. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered what I understood not. Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare unto thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, and now my eye seeth thee. Wherefore abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. What did Job just say? Anybody have any ideas? Job is indicating that, hey, I've realized I don't know anything. And I spoke out of turn. Whatever I did know, I spoke out of turn, really. And even when he's saying here to the Lord, he says, because he said in verse 3, who is this that hideth counsel without knowledge? Who therefore have I uttered that I understood not? Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. I mean, it's above me. It's above and beyond me. But in the next passage here, he says, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare unto me. Now keep in mind, this word beseech means please, Lord, please. He's not demanding of God of anything, really. You'll see the word demand here. We'll talk about it in a second. But he's saying, please, Lord. He says, here, I please, I beseech you, Lord. I'm seeking from you. I want to know, you know. And he says, and I will speak, but I will demand of thee. This demand is like, I'm here, Lord. I'm ready to listen to you. Not that I want you to tell me what to do. No, it's not like that. I'm here to listen. I'm here to receive what you got for me. And I've heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye seeth thee. Now, did he really see the Lord as far as physically see the Lord? I see Tracy shaking his head. No. He did not see him physically. But let me ask you this. Don't you, when a situation comes up and you get a little bit more information on something, don't you finally, now I see, now I understand what the situation was about. Now I understand more. And that's what he's referring to. Now I see about you more, Lord. Because I've heard what you've said about all these things, these creatures and all that stuff, all those other things he talked about the ostrich, the peacock, and all those things he talked about, those animals he talked about. God talked about them, you know. He said, now I see. And now I understand more, a little bit more. So that is, Job has now got to the point he's realized, I messed up. I love you, Lord. I've done all that, but I've kind of overstepped my boundaries sometimes, because he challenged God in a way, because he wants to know, why am I suffering like this? Why is this happening? Now, let me ask you, is that a natural response for anybody? We're human beings, and we want to know why we're suffering. And we may not know the answer, and never know that answer until we go out in the presence of the Lord, okay? Things that we go through, we don't know. But we may not until we get to be with the Lord to see. But it's what? The key is, it's in God's hands and his control. For his purposes, it's all being done, for his will to be done. So going down here, and it was so, in verse 7, and it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, my wrath is kindled against thee, and against thy two friends. For ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, and that ye have not spoken of me the things which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite went and did according as the Lord commanded them. The Lord accepted Job. Interesting. So what happened here? Pardon? Yeah, Job was vindicated. And God turned like to the 3 friends. You guys messed up. You guys said things that weren't right about the situation, about God also. And he's telling them, you go get what? 7 bullocks, 7 rams, and you go get those, and you come before Job, and Job will what? Pray for you. God says, you guys may pray if you want to pray, but I'm not listening to you guys, because you guys messed up. But he turns to Job, when Job prays, because Job is what? He's a righteous man. Out of the whole bunch, he's the righteous man right there. And he's the one that's going to pray for you. This is not the only time this has ever happened in a way that when God turned and said, about the prayer. I don't remember in the book of Genesis, when Abraham prayed. And God said when Pharaoh did something wrong, and I think it's Pharaoh, I can't remember the thoughts now. Genesis 37, I think it is. But he said when he prays, then I'll heal you. When he prays. God has, for Job is the one who's going to pray. Eliphaz and Bildad and Shuhite, all you 3 guys, you messed up. And you said the wrong things. But when my man Job prays for you, I will listen for him. Isn't it interesting that God chooses to respond in a way because of what? The key is one word. Prayer. Prayer. He knows. Doesn't God already know? God already knows about them. He knows what they're going to do, this sacrifice. He knows that. He knows everything's going to happen, but he does what? And when he says down there in verse 8, take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, and that ye have not spoken to me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. And then verse 9, and as the Lord commanded them, and the Lord also accepted Job by his prayer. Just praying. Yeah, they had to do those things. They had to do those sacrifices, but the key was the prayer. We have the chance to talk to the Lord by prayer, don't we? He allows us to come to him. He wants us to come to him by prayer. Does he not already know the things that are happening in our lives and all those challenges that go on in our lives? It's like he doesn't. It's not like he's back, well, that happened to you? I didn't know that was happening. He knows all of those things. But he wants us to talk to him, to pray to him. That's what we do. That's what we do, these prayer requests. Come and talk and bring them before him. Okay? I need to move on. I'm going to run out of time here. So if you see up here, you see my list I got up here for you in verses 7 through 9. He's vindicated. God granted Job intercessory ministry. We just talked about that. God gave Job the comfort of family and friends. So we're going to move down here. Chapter 42 and verse 10. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also that the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters and all they that had been of his acquaintance that before did eat bread with him in his house, and they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he named and he called the name of the first Jemiah, and the name of the second, boy, these are tough names for me now. I try my best, but Keziah, and the name of the third, Kernahapuk. Are we naming our children? Anybody got your children's name like this? And all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. We'll stop right there in a second. So you see these bullets here I got up here for you from this lesson. He doubled Job's wealth. He gave them 10 more children. How many children passed away? 10. He got 10 more, okay? He gave Job a long life. We'll talk about here in verse 16 in a second. But these are some of the blessings that God gave to him. His health came back to him, and his friends came back. And it's interesting, his family, his sisters, his brothers, they all, hey, we're here, Job, we're here for you. They were here earlier when he was dealing the things he was dealing with. You know, they weren't among the 3 friends or Elihu who showed up, who came to talk to him sitting around the campfire. But now his brothers and his sisters show up. Everybody starts showing up now, okay? But the Lord blessed him with all that. Now back to verse 16 here. And after this, Job lived 140 years and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died being old and full of days. How old was he when he died? Any bad ideas? Put that math cap on right now. I see y'all looking in the Bible. There's an answer right there somewhere. I missed it. How old do you think he was? How old do you think he was when he started out in this whole thing about being challenged? Was he a young man? Old man? Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You're guessing about 40, okay. Anybody else? The key is right here, what you just saw in that passage. He lived what? How many? 140 years. Everything else was doubled, right? Everything he had possession-wise were doubled. And the children were doubled because there was 10 more. It's like, okay. So what about his years? Correct. He probably was about 70 years old when all this took place on him. And the Lord blessed him with doubling his years to make him 210. In order to see all these generations of children that took place, of his children, his grandchildren, his sons, even 4 generations. Say, rough, that's a long period of time. Y'all are thinking, whew, I don't know if I want to go that long, but back then they did live longer. It was a thing to live longer. Yes, Sister Irby. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And I take it he was 70 years old, and the Lord doubled the years for him to live. Are you thinking he was 140 when he started and we got to this point? Right. On to the years he already had. If he was 70 years old, add 140 to the top of that. That's right. That's the way I see it. But the Lord blessed him abundantly. You know, his wife was still around too because they had 10 more children, of course. You know, she's still hanging in there. But the blessing. Well, let me ask you this: a lot of y'all, some of y'all, a lot older than me. I'm getting up there in age too, but some are older. But the older you get, don't you like the blessing of your children, your grandchildren? I don't know if y'all have great grandchildren, I don't know how far back y'all got for children. But isn't it a blessing to see them? To be that, the parent, the great grandparent of your children, of all of that, the blessing of that. So let's move on here. God rewards and blesses faithful believers. The ultimate reward of this is James chapter 1 and verse 12. Of all that Job had gone through, all the struggles he had gone through, the greatest blessing is, blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Did not Job go through a whole lot of stuff? I mean, you think about it, we go back to the very beginning, everything taken away, his children, first children, set of children taken away, and his health hurt, and all of that. But even with us in our lives, blessed is the man that endureth temptation. For when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that what? To do what? That love him. When we go through challenges and things, how do we go through those challenges? Do we go through blaming God and, like Job's wife said, just curse God and die? And he didn't do it. But he still loved the Lord no matter what he was going through. He still loved the Lord and all that. So some of the blessings here, some of the benefits that you see. I'm sorry about that timer. I don't know why I come into that thing. Spiritual learning, his validation of faith, ministry to others, a stronger testimony, character refined, deeper humility, and greater dependence on God. Of all that stuff that Job had went through, just like with us, when we go through challenges in our life, does it not do those things for us to help us to draw closer to the Lord, have more dependence on him as well? Does it not do the things of deeper humility, and our character was refined? Even Job was a great man starting in chapter 1. He still became a greater man, I think, through all of that as well. So in the challenges that we go through, we may not have as much challenge that Job had gone through, but still the challenges he went through made him a better person as well. Can you imagine when he had gone through all of that, and the Lord, took care of all, gave him all those the sheep and the goats and the camels and the yoke of oxen, the she-ass, all that stuff, possessions, what was doubled what he had at the very beginning. Okay, his great wealth, all that. But still as a person that he was, to have more children again, and to him to be able to talk to his family, talk to his children. This is what I've gone through. This is what happened. And talk to his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, to explain to them what he had gone through. But he still had his focus on the Lord. He did not know, and he still did not know, what happened behind the curtain at the very beginning. It was never given to him to know that. It was never given to him to know why should he suffer. Isn't that what most people think? When you come to the book of Job, what's the first thought when you hear about the book of Job? I'm sorry? Suffering. I mean, why do good people suffer? I mean, the first thought, why do good people suffer? the answer's never given, is it? God doesn't say at the very end, okay, this is why good people suffer. He doesn't do that. The emphasis is God is in control. No matter what happens, you just keep your eye on him and go through it. He takes care of it. Just like you see in James chapter 1 when it says, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. To them that are focused on him, to those who have got their eye on him. Job did that, going through all the trials he went through, he focused that on him. His focus. That's what it is about. There's no guarantee that anyone in this room of us may not come down with something, some grave illness or whatever it might be that really impacts our lives. And how do we respond to that? Lord, you're in control. It's totally in your hands. No matter what happens, you're in control. This is from lesson 13. I kind of squeeze this in here because I'm trying to wrap this up, 13. So the lessons from Job is suffering and sovereignty, okay? The lesson of sovereign design. What did Job ask God? What did God ask Job at the height of his consideration of Leviathan? Remember, that's one of the creatures you see in that little background there. God's creature, unconquerable by man. So in Job chapter 41, if you want to turn to chapter 41, verse 10, none is so fierce that dare stir him up. God's talking about the Leviathan. None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? Who hath prevented me? Who is that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. God pointed out what here? He pointed out this creature he talked about, the Leviathan. Say the words right. Get my letters together. He's talking about this creature here, this sea creature. There's nobody who can control him but God. There's nobody, no matter who you are. He says, none is so fierce that dare stir him up, or who then is able to stand before me. Who can stand before the Leviathan? Can stand before the Lord? Nobody. Nobody can. The idea is that God's sovereignty, his sovereign design for everything is in his hand, his control. The lesson of emotion. To what truth did Job submit his emotions? Anybody have any ideas? Chapter 1 and verse. I didn't write these down because we're in the book of Job. We can just flip over there real quickly. Job chapter 1 and verse 21. Job chapter 1 and verse 21. We'll do verse 20 as well. And Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell upon the ground and worshipped and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. How many of us have gone through the same thing that Job did and be able to do the same thing to say, blessed be the name of the Lord, no matter what? The lesson of good and evil, chapter 1 and verse 10. Verse 10, it says, well, let's go to verse 9. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, doeth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him and about his house and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. Satan said that you've given all this stuff to him. You got him surrounded. He's protected. He's not going to curse you until you take it away from him. The lesson of good and evil. The key is that God is ruler over Satan. Satan couldn't do what? When those challenges happened to Job, could Satan just go down there and do it? He couldn't, could he? He knew, his idea was, okay, you take all his possessions away from him, he'll curse you, God. So God had to do what? Allow Satan to do the things he did. Satan couldn't just do it on his own. God had control. Next point here, the lessons of humble trust. Chapter 12. Wouldn't probably touch on these all individually here, but 12 verse 13. With him is wisdom and strength, he hath counsel and understanding. I'm not going to read all of these because I'm going to run out of time here what I'm looking at. The lesson of humble trust. God understands us. God is our Redeemer. Then he said in chapter 19 and verse 25, Job said, my Redeemer liveth. God refines our character. Chapter 23, verse 10, God is in control. We talked about that. God rewards those who humbly trust in him. We've talked about it in chapter 42. Oh, wrong chapter. Chapter 42. I meant to get chapter 42. God rewards those who humbly trust in him. The lesson of defense. What did Job desire? In chapter 31 and verse 16. 31 verse 16. 6. Let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know my iniquity. This is when Job was talking to the Lord. Let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know my iniquity. Even though Job was a righteous man, did he not feel that I may have done some things wrong? There might be something in my life that's hindering me that might be part of this problem. Wouldn't that be the same thing with us to think about? That there might be some iniquity in my life. You know, even though Job here he was that was chosen for this whole ordeal to go through, God said there was no man like him. Now let me ask you, did Job sin in his life? Yeah, I know y'all are afraid to answer sometimes. I don't know how to answer this. Yes, he's a man. He's a person, you know. But that's not why he was that's not why he was being challenged with all of this he was going through. But he thought himself as well, Lord, is there some iniquity in my heart and life that I need to know about that's hindering me? The last couple of bullets here, we got one last thing. The lesson of perspective. What perspective did Job have in the midst of his intense suffering? Verse 6, chapter 6, verse, let me move this out of my way. Chapter 6, verse 4. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. The poison whereof drinketh up my spirit, and the terrors of God do set themselves in array against me. How did Job think? What was his thought in this? He's thinking, the Lord is against me. All this is happening because the Lord's against me. And I don't know why it's against me. He's against me. I don't know what's wrong. You know, as he saw here. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. The poison whereof drinketh up my spirit. The terrors of God do set themselves in array against me. The last part is the lesson of helping those who hurt. 16 verse 2. Anybody have ideas? Anybody have ideas what he said to them? 16 and verse 2. What did he call his comforters? Miserable comforters. I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye. Those guys who were sitting around the campfire with him, giving him advice. Miserable comforters, he said. Let me ask you this. As somebody that you know has gone through something, a tragedy or whatever it might be, what do you say to them? I don't know about y'all, but some of us have had a death of a child, okay? And somebody comes up and says, you know what they tell you a lot of times? It's okay, you can have another one. That's not comforting at the time. It's far from it. But those of us who have experienced that know that it hurts deeper than just having another child. And that's what some people don't know how to comfort when they come up to you. They use a phrase that sounds good, and that's what some of these guys here, these three guys here, they did some of their wisdom. We talked about that, some of it based on tradition and those kind of things they said and did. But to know how to really comfort somebody and being sensitive on how to comfort. You think about what Job was going through. He says, you are miserable comforters. And we've all experienced miserable comforters in our lives somewhere along the way, I think. So the last, he said, what did Job say he would do if he were a comforter? In chapter 16 and verse 5, he says, but I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the moving of my lips would assuage your grief. He said, I wouldn't be like you guys. I would try to earnestly how to encourage you, how to strengthen you. But you guys, you're no help. That's where we should be, is learn how to be comforters to other people, how to be a comfort to them. I'm not wise enough about everything, and none of us are, but you know who you can talk to about it? You can talk to the Lord. Lord, what can I say to be of help? What should be the right thing to say? Or should I not say a thing? Sometimes you shouldn't say a thing. But no, trust the Lord to guide and direct you. Don't just blur out those phrases like, oh, you can have another child. No problem. Yeah, it is a problem. Because that's the child I loved that's gone. That hurts. So let's move on. This is here, I'm wrapping this up. I don't know if you've ever seen this or heard of this before. It's really a song, but I'm not singing. I spare you that part. But I'm going to read you the words of this. And I put this up here to help kind of set the stage for you to see this. It says, the rain falls. The old man and the farmer's little boy stood there staring at the cornfields in southern Illinois. Last year, the drought took all our crops. The fields looked like a sea. If God is great and God is good, why did this happen to me? And the old man answered, the rain falls on good and bad, not because of what they did, not because of what they had. The rain falls on rich and poor. We don't know the reasons for the Lord. The farmer said, my neighbor's wife thinks she knows me pretty good. She said the flood is the Lord's way of saying I ain't living like I should. Though I know better, said the old man, and you know better too. You are a good, hardworking man, and she's wrong judging you. Just tell her, the rain falls on good and bad, not because of what they did, not because of what they had. The rain falls on rich and poor. We don't know the reasons for the ways of the Lord. The old man said, I learned the hard way. And his voice began to break. My wife took ill back in 60 and she died in 68. No one loved God better. There was no one more sincere. And when I would say, it just isn't fair, she whispered in my ear. She said, the rain falls on good and bad, not because of what they did, not because of what they had. The rain falls on rich and poor. There before the grace of God go on so many more. We don't know the reasons of the way of the Lord, the ways of the Lord. Is it not true the rain falls on the good and the bad, the rich and the poor? We don't know, why things happen. But you know what? We know that the Lord is in control of everything. Any comments, any questions? All right, we're wrapping up the book of Job. So let me, in case you need those. For those who have been here before, we talked about this. We're going to start, and I put in here, January the 7th, we'll start the new series, January the 7th. And I mentioned to you earlier, Lord willing, the next few weeks in December, we're talking about the Christmas time, Christmas theme, and all that. We're going to be dealing with that next few lessons here for this December. This is my commercial. I showed this to you earlier. This is, the books have come in. The other books have come in for the new series. They've showed up. I'll hand it out late, not today, of course. But the other thing is this other side here, this book here that I'm showing you that I can order. Some of you have already put down you wanted to order. So I've already be ordering these for you if you want. This is just totally extra. It's a lot. It covers the Old Testament from Genesis all the way to the silent years to Malachi. He covers all of that. The regular price is $48.95, but if I get 5 or more, I can get it for $32.40 is what it can get it down to. So I do need you to sign up, and that's why I put on here. If you can sign up by December 10th, which is by next Sunday, and let me know, and I can get the order sent out. So let me know that. So that's the commercial part of that. I try to share resources with you as much as I can that I come across. Anything would help you, be of help to you, and be cheaper if possible, if not free, if we can find it. Anybody have any comments, any questions? I heard the first bell. All right. Let's go, Lord, in prayer, and we'll be dismissed. Dear Heavenly Father, dear Lord, thank you for taking care of us. Thank you, Lord, for your goodness in our lives. And thank you, Lord, for the book of Job and what you've given us to be able to study it and help us to study it better. Please guide and direct this morning, Lord, in your will about the pastor as he preaches and leads us the children's ministry, the bus ministry that goes on. Blessing those things there, Lord. Help those who are recovering from surgeries, Lord. Take care of them this morning as well and not able to be here with us. We ask you to just guide and direct our steps. In Jesus' very precious name, amen.